There's nothing worse than watching your best friend die. Actually, I take that back. There's nothing worse than watching your best friend die and knowing you can do nothing to stop it. For 3.5 years, Jesus and I were inseparable. I was just a teenager, nothing more than a fisherman's apprentice when I first met the rabbi from Nazareth, but it was Jesus that had turned me into a man. For 3.5 years, I'd sat at his feet, I'd walked in his dust, and I'd gazed upon his glory. Glory as of the only begotten from the Father, full of grace and truth. During those years, I was granted the immense privilege of seeing things no one before had ever seen. Things which the angels themselves, along with Abraham and Moses and David, could only long to look upon. I was there in the beginning when he turned water to wine, and I believed in him. I saw the delight in that Roman official's eyes when Jesus healed his son from a distance. I fell to my knees in awe when that paralytic at the pool of Bethesda stood on his own 2 feet for the first time in 38 years. For weeks, I feasted on the leftovers from that time he fed thousands of people with nothing more than 5 loaves and 2 fish. I can still recall how afraid we were when we saw that ghost out on the lake, only to realize it was him, walking on the surface of the water as if it were as solid as the road to Jerusalem. I was there in Jerusalem when he opened the eyes of the man born blind, and with my 2 eyes, I got to witness the man's reactions as he saw anything for the very first time. I was there in Bethany when Jesus wept. My eyes heard a dead man take a breath, and with trembling hands, I helped unwrap that man and welcome him back to the land of the living. Some will say these stories are nothing more than fables, myths, legends, but I know better. I was there. I heard it with my ears. I saw it with my eyes. I touched it with my hands. For 3.5 years, I followed that rabbi, and over time, I came to recognize him as more than just a rabbi. He was a king. More than that, he was the king. He was the King of Kings. I still couldn't fathom how, but in some way, this man before me, my best friend, was more than just a man. As unbelievable as it may sound, he was God in the flesh. He didn't merely help me become a man. He's the one who created me to begin with. And for some reason known only to him, he called me his beloved disciple. Oh, the stories I could tell. But now things are different. Now my best friend is nailed to a tree and there's nothing I can do about it. If I could take his place, I would. But in some strange way, I feel as if he's taking mine. He has a crown upon his head and a sign labeling him the king, but the crown is made of thorns, and the sign is placed in mockery. Everyone else has abandoned him, even Peter, who swore he wouldn't. And the guards are gambling over his clothing, mocking the very one who gave them life. He writhes up and down on the cross, his sheared flesh scraping against the jagged wood as he tries to catch his breath. He holds himself up long enough to suck in a breath of air, but no sooner has he completed his inhale than his muscles collapse under the weight of his body and he droops back down, gasping for breath again. I've been holding out hope that he would perform one final miracle, that he would put everyone in their place. But that doesn't seem to be part of the plan. Only moments ago, he entrusted his own mother to my care. Those aren't the actions of a man who plans on making it out alive. For a while, he's been telling us that the night was coming, and the night is finally here. It's the middle of the day, but outside it is as black as night. They say that the veil in the temple tore from top to bottom the very moment that Jesus died. Matthew tells me that the dead were raised to life and that there was a violent earthquake through the whole city. And I'm sure all that is true. But for me, something else entirely is forever seared at the forefront of my mind. I still see him taking that sip of sour wine to prepare his throat, and then mustering as much strength as he could manage, he cried out those words which still haunt me to this day. It is finished. But how could it be finished? It felt as if things had only just begun. 3.5 years was too short a time to spend with him. A day would have been better than 1,000 years elsewhere, but even 1,000 years would have never been enough. Only 5 days ago, we sung his praises as he rode into the city on a donkey, declaring himself its rightful king. Only hours ago, I'd reclined at his chest and eaten food from the palm of his hand, exchanged smiles and laughs, and learned of long-promised prophecies coming to soon fulfillment. How could it be finished? And yet it was. I saw them break the legs of the criminals to his left and right, and I watched in horror as they drove that spear through his side. I held his mother, now my mother, in a tight embrace so she wouldn't see the blood and water come flowing out. Her tears still stained my cloak. Even now, some prominent men have arrived to remove the nails and take his body down. One of them owns a family tomb in a nearby garden, and in his grief, he's offered to bury my best friend there. Jesus once told us that his disciples would know the truth, and the truth would set us free. For 3.5 years, I'd been his disciple, and over those years, I had come to know him as the truth itself, the way, the truth, and the life. Now, in his death, his words proved as true as they had in his life. He said, "It is finished," and so it is. I don't want to believe it, but I have no other choice. My best friend is dead.